The US, France, and their allies called for an immediate 21-day ceasefire along the Israel-Lebanon border on Wednesday, while also supporting one in Gaza after emergency talks among the UN Security Council. The ceasefire would apply to the Israel-Lebanon Blue Line, allowing both sides to seek a diplomatic solution, according to a senior official in the Biden administration. The statement released by the White House said, quote, "We call on all parties, including the governments of Israel and Lebanon, to endorse the temporary ceasefire immediately," and was backed by allies including Australia, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the EU. Earlier in the day, Israel had expanded airstrikes in Lebanon, killing 72 people according to Lebanese health ministry statements, with a possible ground assault raising concerns of a wider war. The senior Biden official said that Washington had been working for months to rein in hostilities between Israel and Lebanon, and that it had been a focus of, quote, almost every discussion President Joe Biden was having with world leaders this week. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati had addressed the UN Security Council earlier in the day.
Lebanon today is victim to an enemy that is using electronic, cyber, sea, and air attacks against us that could turn into a ground attack and set the stage for an all-out regional war. I hope to return to my country armed with your explicit stance, calling for the cessation of this aggression out of respect for the sovereignty and safety of my country.
Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon then defended his country's actions to the council.
Israel does not seek a full-scale war. We have made our desire for peace clear to all those who are not blinded by hatred and political agendas. However, Israel is under attack.
Meanwhile, Iran reiterated its support for Hezbollah, warning of further escalation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was due to arrive in New York on Thursday and address the UN General Assembly on Friday.
The updated version of the document proposes that aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear weapon state, but with the participation or support of a nuclear weapon state, should be regarded as a joint attack on the Russian Federation. The conditions for Russia's transition to the use of nuclear weapons are also clearly defined. We will consider such a possibility as soon as we receive reliable information about a massive launch of aerospace attack means and their crossing of our state border, meaning strategic or tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, drones, hypersonic missiles, and other aircraft.
Беспилотники, гиперзвуковые и другие летательные аппараты. Являем за собой право.
We reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in the event of aggression against Russia and Belarus as a member of the Union State. All these issues have been agreed upon with the Belarusian side and with the president of Belarus. This includes cases when the enemy, using conventional weapons, poses a critical threat to our sovereignty.
It is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Just this past week, they searched the home of our new police commissioner, looking for documents from 20 years ago, just 1 week after he joined my administration. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. If I'm charged, I know I am innocent. I will request an immediate trials so the New Yorkers can hear the truth. New Yorkers know my story. They know where I come from. I have been fighting injustice my entire life. That fight has continued as your mayor. Despite our pleas, when the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief, I put the people of New York before party and politics. Now, if I am charged, many may say I should resign because I cannot manage the city while fighting the case. I can also understand how everyday New Yorkers will be concerned that I cannot do my job while I face accusation. But I have been facing these lies for months since I began to speak out for all of you and their investigation started. Yet the city has continued to improve. Make no mistake, you elected me to lead this city, and lead it I will. I humbly ask for your prayers and your patience as we see this through. God bless you, and God bless the city of New York.
Inside these brown boxes at an undisclosed location in a Washington state government facility is the abortion medication mifepristone.
We need a state that will protect American women.
Washington Governor Jay Inslee's administration purchased 30,000 doses of the drug last year as a federal lawsuit sought to restrict access to abortion medication nationwide. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected that case in June, keeping mifepristone on the market. Inslee said the state will maintain its stockpile, which is enough to supply the state's abortion patients for an estimated 3 years. He remains concerned about what Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump would do if he won the November 5th election against Democratic U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris.
The Supreme Court decision was not definitive in protecting mifepristone regarding the FDA authorization. The court said there was no standing, which leads them later on to be able to pull the rug out from underneath women with the help of Donald Trump. So as long as Trump is on the scene, that risk exists. And so I'm glad that we have that stockpiles.
Trump has sometimes taken a muddled position on abortion, including mifepristone, which is commonly prescribed as part of a 2-drug regimen to end early pregnancies. In August, the former president suggested he might be open to directing the Food and Drug Administration to revoke access to the drug if he wins the election, though his campaign later said he would not seek to do so. Inslee said the issue transcends Trump.
This is a long-term threat. Those who want to take away reproductive health for women, they're not going to stop last week, this week, or next week. It is a multi-decadal effort, and we have to continually keep people out of public office who can threaten women in this country. That certainly includes this November.
Protecting reproductive freedom.
Harris and other Democrats have made abortion a central campaign issue this year. A majority of Americans say abortion should be legal in most or all cases, according to Reuters Ipsos polling.
I tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz gets his chance to face off against Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance Tuesday in their only scheduled debate before the November 5th election. Donald Trump's running mate is a U.S. Senator from Ohio and best-selling author of Hillbilly Elegy. Vance coined the term childless cat ladies to disparage Democrats and latched onto a made-up story about Haitian immigrants eating pets.
These are stories that people have been living for months or in some cases years. The only thing that Donald Trump and I did is highlighted and focused on him so that you guys would stop ignoring the American people.
Kamala Harris's VP pick is a former high school teacher and football coach who served in Congress and is currently the governor of Minnesota. Walz has called his Republican opponents weird, a label that quickly stuck.
These guys are creepy and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see.
A person involved with Vance's debate prep said he would try to portray Walz as a leftist masquerading as a moderate. Vance has also accused him of leaving the Army National Guard to avoid getting deployed to Iraq.
I think what actually might happen based on his military service is he's going to bail out at the last minute but say he went anyway. I think that's the Tim Walz approach to the debate.
These guys are even attacking me for my record of service. And I just want to say, I'm proud to have served my country, and I always will be.
Walz has cast Vance as out of touch and an Ivy League educated wonk. A debate expert told Reuters that the most important job for both candidates is to be an effective surrogate and proxy for their respective campaigns. Vance may have to work to connect with the public, as polls show he is viewed more unfavorably than Walz. A Pew Research Center poll this month showed 34% of Americans view Vance favorably, while 42% viewed him unfavorably. Walz was viewed favorably by 39% of Americans, while 33% had an unfavorable opinion.
Floridians were bracing on Wednesday for the potentially catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. Helene entered the Gulf of Mexico that afternoon and was forecast to rapidly strengthen into a Category 4 storm as it picks up strength from the Gulf's warm waters, with winds up to 156 miles per hour, before making an expected landfall Thursday evening in Florida's Panhandle. National Hurricane Center Deputy Director Jamie Rome said that meant potentially, quote, catastrophic wind impacts for those in the path of the storm. In the city of Clearwater, people filled sandbags on Wednesday as they prepared for a potentially life-threatening storm surge, which could reach as high as 20 feet in the Big Bend area, north of Clearwater, where the storm is expected to hit.
I'm worried about the storm surge, the water that could be 4 to 8 feet in my house, and I lose everything. We came out here and we're actually having a really good time getting prepped with everybody and getting input on how everybody is prepping. So it's been really good, and it's helping me to calm down and come here with my community.
The National Hurricane Center said Helene was expected to dump up to 15 inches of rain in some spots after making landfall, causing severe flooding. Rome noted about half of lives lost in hurricanes typically come from flash flooding, often among people who drive into flooded roads and are swept away. He urged those in affected areas to use caution. The Hurricane Center said more than 40 million people in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama were under hurricane and tropical storm warnings. Evacuations were ordered along Florida's Gulf Coast, and dozens of counties have announced school closures.
Sri Lankans woke up on Wednesday to newspaper headlines reporting that just days after winning election, the country's new president had dissolved the legislature. That means a snap parliamentary election will happen November 14th. This is just another massive expenditure, this man says, while this man thinks it's a good move to start afresh. What does President Anurakumara Dissanayake hope to accomplish with a fresh parliament, and what are the risks for the debt-ridden nation? Dissanayake won Saturday's presidential election with the support of 5.6 million voters, or just over 42%. His nearest rival garnered less than 33% support. The Marxist-leaning leader with no political lineage rode a wave of support as a candidate of change. Change that many felt was desperately needed after Sri Lanka's economic collapse in 2022. He acknowledged in his inaugural speech on Monday that Sri Lankans have a very negative view of politicians. We have a deep understanding that we have a challenging country. Our politics must be cleaner, he said. We will commit ourselves to that. He's promised to cut taxes and free up revenue for public investment. But to deliver on policy, he needs a parliament that reflects his program, and he's betting a snap election will give him that. The National People's Power Alliance, which includes Disanayake's JVP party, held just 3 seats in the last parliament. Sri Lanka agreed to a 4-year, $2.9 billion IMF bailout program that has helped boost reserves, stem a fall in its currency, and tame runaway inflation. But the bailout came with strings attached, including austerity measures. Angry voters pinned hopes of a better future on their next leader. In his bid for office, Dissanayake said he wanted to revisit the terms of the IMF bailout. But to pass a budget, he needs parliamentary support. Sri Lanka is in the middle of restructuring about $25 billion in foreign debt. Getting parliamentary backing will strengthen Disanayake's hands in negotiations with bondholders. Those creditors may be reassured if the new president can clarify his policy. With such a narrow bench in parliament, the new president was unable to staff a full roster of ministers. On Tuesday, Dissanayake unveiled his cabinet pick, and it only has 3 members. One is a first-time lawmaker, now Prime Minister, who will handle 5 portfolios. Another veteran legislator is now Foreign Minister and overseeing 5 other ministries. Key ministries such as Finance, Defence and Energy are all run by Dissanayake himself. The snap general election was widely expected as part of Dissanayaka's plan to fix many of the issues that have his hands tied.